Hello and welcome to Startup Gippsland Live, a place where both budding and established regional founders can feel right at home. We're here to inspire you to take the path less travelled, to make your idea a reality, and most of all, to hone your entrepreneurial skills so that you can grow and scale your business and realise your potential. Get ready for this episode of Startup Gippsland Live. Now here's your host, Zoe Doyle.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Startup Gippsland Live. I'm your host, Zoe Doyle, and today I'm talking to the man that probably needs no introductions, Brandon Burns. Brandon is a seasoned professional actor, performer, TV host, having appeared on classic Aussie shows such as Neighbours, Round the Twist, Blue Heelers and Rush, taking me back to my childhood. I love it. Brandon also has extensive experience in sales, marketing and digital technology and is a passionate advocate for having an entertain-first mindset, helping challenger brands and startups differentiate in the marketplace. He's also an angel investor, and at Startup Gippsland, we're very lucky to have him as one of our mentors. Brandon, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Zoe. Fist bump to begin.
Woo!
What an introduction, thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much for coming on. We're so excited to have you. So, Brandon, you've graced Aussie TV screens through your role in Blue Heelers and as a finalist on Australian Idol in 2003.
Yep.
Tell us more about your experiences and how they shaped who you are today.
Yeah, cool. Well, I was 17 when I went on Idol. I remember it being pre-internet. So if you were to imagine when you first started your MySpace or Facebook account, it was just before then. So it's like, although I was on, I reckon at the time, the most viewed and rated television show for at least 5 or 6 years, there's nothing really on YouTube that you can find, which is so fascinating.
No, because I was looking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you can find my Rush episode, you can find Neighbours, because they catalogue that pretty well.
Yeah.
But Idol you can't really find, but you know what? I did make it onto a Worst Moments DVD.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, what are DVDs? I know. But well, I made it to the top 40, but when we were making it, we were getting cut from the top 100 to the top 60. We had to do an exercise where Mark Holden, Marsha Hines, Dicko, they gave us the lines to a Stevie Wonder song like at 11 p.m. at night. And we had to learn in groups of 3 throughout the night and then come back and perform it. And we had to make up our own choreography. So obviously it was an exercise in putting pressure on us and seeing how we went. And our group of 3, we kind of lost the words and we didn't go too well. And we were convinced we were going to get cut. But I remember when we were in the room, they put us into 3 groups. And they said to our group, they said, look, it's been really tough and obviously not everyone can go through. And obviously a lot of you in this room didn't do so well. And I remember looking over and I could see Guy Sebastian's afro in the room. And I'm like, well, if this guy's in the same room as me, we're getting through, because throughout the auditions, he was just a standout. Yeah. And we did. But who were the people on the show? There was Shannon Noll. You might remember Shannon. Yeah.
Of course I do.
Yeah, Millsy.
Yeah.
Cosima. Remember Cosima?
Yes.
She pulled out with the nodules, the voice complaints.
Yeah.
Paulini. Remember Paulini?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was one of those seasons where I didn't make it to the top 10. I made it to top 40, which is like semi-finals. Yeah. But because it was so widely viewed, I managed to get quite a bit of longevity and profile out of it.
Yeah, great.
So when you said, how's it shaped you, I would say I took a risk at 17. So obviously I've been performing as a kid on TV and film, and and musical theatre, and I'd learned how to handle rejection. I was going to auditions like twice a week with my parents. And I'd spent 6 months of my life when I was 15 filming a television show on Channel 10, and we had a classroom on set. And I lived up in Melbourne with my uncle and auntie for 6 months, and we filmed the show, right? And it was kind of that experience, I guess, working in an adult environment, but also in an environment where, I was doing schoolwork, but I was also learning lines, and then just having to make sure, when you film, you don't forget them. And so I think that helped me with being ready to handle the pressure of trying to go for the audition and do well and get through.
Yeah. And then was it through Idol that you got your gigs with Blue Heelers and Neighbours, or was that prior to Idol?
It's interesting. That was all when I was a kid. So I reprised my role on Neighbours of Dougal Kirk. Yeah. Because the boy playing Ben Kirk, Felix Mannering, I think his name is, he was leaving the show to go to Hollywood. So they brought me back so that it could show that he was moving in with my character. So, you know, he's gone to Hollywood, and I'm sitting here with you, Zoe. But it's all good. But no, I did that when I was a kid, and all the film and TV predominantly was as a kid. Blue Heelers twice, Round the Twist, High Flyers, the show, Rush, and then there was a couple of short films I did after Idol. Yeah. One of which was by an award-winning director in Australia who's now gone on to Hollywood and directed a couple of things. And the one kind of small regret I have is that I got a lot of work as a kid in film and television, and as a result, I'd get booked quite often, right? But I never really took the time to actually properly hone the craft of acting properly. It was full on, but great experience as well, you know?
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, we digress.
Oh, no, it's fascinating stuff. I feel like I'm in very good company today. I have to ask you for an autograph at the end.
Does anyone do autographs anymore? But you meet such interesting people doing creative arts and acting and film and music and all that. That's what I've found. And I've found there's so many people who've got a creative lean with music and acting and film who are in startups. There's quite a few.
Yeah, because all the skills that you learn through that creative stuff can make you a better business owner, like, you know, public speaking and having confidence and dealing with rejection and failure. Like, they're all applied.
Yeah. Correct. I mean, I had to deal with rejection at least 3 times with you because I said, can you please have me on your podcast? And it was like 4 times that you said no.
I said, no, Brandon, you're not good enough for me.
And it wasn't until I sent you some chocolates that, you know, finally said, okay, fine, you can come on. But only for 20 minutes.
Such a liar. Anyway. All right, so you're an entrepreneur at heart. Tell us more about your business, Torch Productions, which you share with your co-founder, Terry Paul.
Well, so Torch Productions was born out of my experience failing at 2 businesses, learning a lot from another one after that, and then having the confidence to take the risk to ask for investment and to back my idea in. So I actually founded it with Ben Thompson, my filmmaking partner, and Terry Paul, who's chairman at Findex, and he's got a huge water disrupting business called Botanical Water Technologies. As you can imagine, I've got this really established and experienced mentor who obviously isn't available a lot operationally, time-wise, but we have time with him once a week. And he's obviously backed us in the business, and he gives us great advice around thinking big in particular. And also around how we can attract the right people to our business and the right type of clients. Because obviously it's a production company, so we can do a lot of things. But the challenge is we don't want to get bogged down with doing too many things that we didn't really want to do, but they pay the bills. And take our eye off committing to bringing full circle what we really want to do. But yeah, I started that one because initially I started a digital agency, and I failed miserably at that because I wanted to be everything to everyone. So I wanted to build websites, I wanted to do SEO, I wanted to manage people's social media, and I was only really good at like one of them. But it was the kind of business where I'm like, I've got to do it all because I need the work. So I became a master of nothing and just a journalist. So I then took that to another business, an app development company. So I started an app development company when apps were huge and everyone was paying a fortune to have them made, and then they get them on the App Store, but then they don't do anything. And so what I learned with that business was I understood and learned a lot about the process of selling a premium product, but I also learned about the customer journey and the timing piece. So we had that business right when there was another business called Appster, which was huge, and it was the place to go to get an app built, but it failed miserably in the end, and it came to a screaming halt because it just ripped too many people off. And so what happened was this reputational piece for getting an app built for like 50 grand all of a sudden became a real, it was like the SEO of 10 years prior, you know, paying someone an exorbitant amount of money to get on the first page of Google, but how they do it, no one really knows. Why am I paying all this money? Oh, I don't know. But anyway, so I learned a lot from that business, and that's where I learned the startup bug. Because through building apps for people, I quickly realised that to have a startup business or a little piece of tech and make something valuable for people, you don't need to build, as you would know, a $50,000, $100,000 app.
No, that's right.
On the App Store, and it's got all the bells and whistles. You can build something much smaller. You can build a smart website. As long as you've got people participating and giving you feedback and telling you what to build out next. And so I learned lean canvas, I learned lean startup, you know, I learned how to master making a minimum viable product.
Yep.
You know, incorporate tech, yes, but what about the customer piece? What about the feedback piece? So I learnt all of that, and then I went into an angel investment firm, and that's where I learnt how to become an angel investor and how to get exposed to opportunity and how to find opportunity and screen it. And then I left that business and started my own because it's like I love creating and I want to do it for other people. So naturally we've fallen into doing it a lot, predominantly for startups and scale-ups that are looking for investment. So we work closely with Virtual, which is Australia's biggest crowdfunding platform. So you can go and, everyone can go and spend $100 or $200 and buy a piece of a craft brewery or a new product or a sustainability business. And we do a lot for them and their customers. It's just that's where our space sits. And we also make shows. So I showed you one earlier, but we want to make television quality content for businesses to use online. Because I reckon, like what we're doing now, podcast, having a show is such a must now to get your message out, as you would have found. Having that medium and the ability to tell people in a more longer format what you're about, what you do, is really key.
Yep.
And I think it's becoming more tangible. 2 years ago, I would have said everyone's got a podcast, but no one's really applying a strategy. They're just having chats.
Yeah.
Whereas now it does feel like people are starting to cotton on to what can make it more and more effective as a tool.
Definitely.
So that's where we're at with the business and how we got there. And
I love it. And, all the lessons you've learnt are definitely the things that we teach our startups here in our programs as well, because, you can't be a master of everything, and we all want to, have a million products and services, but, and there's some future guests that I will be talking to about this same topic. There's lots of recurring topics on this show, which I love it, because they're all those fundamentals that we really need to nail and understand before we can succeed. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I have so many great ideas, I'm sure you do too. And then I have some great ideas, but when I rank them against my other ideas, I think, that one doesn't have the potential to be anywhere near as big as that one. So if ever I was going to do one, I'd do the big one. And what I think a lot of people talk themselves out of is starting with a really good idea that solves a problem. And, rather than me talk to that concept, which I'm sure you and everyone does all the time, I'll tell a story, a quick example. So people listening or watching may have heard of Mr. Yum. It's an Australian business that most recently secured $89 million in funding from Tiger Capital in New York.
Okay.
And about 6 months ago, they secured about $13 million in funding in Australia from Airtree Ventures, 10X up in Queensland and a couple others. And before that, they'd raised about $1.5 million. And before that, they'd spent about $100,000 on starting the business.
Yep.
So Mr. Yum now is the leading application for when anyone goes to a restaurant or cafe, scan the QR code and order from your table.
Yeah.
So it's a tech solution now. It'd go as far to say that it's a fintech now. Where did it start? They started with the idea to just want to make menus better quality. So they went and manually employed about 20 photographers to go around to about 30 restaurants that had really cruddy plastic folded laminated menus, right?
Yep.
And they said to the owners of the restaurants, let us, for free, take the most amazing, glamorous photography of all of your dishes and assemble for you a digital menu. So they thought, surely we can improve that experience, because we're all sitting in restaurants holding these cruddy-looking things and there's no pictures.
Yeah.
So the simple solution they solved was, let's just make digital menus a better experience and incorporate better photography so that people get what they want and they're excited. So that was step one. Step two, remember when Menulog, Uber came out about 3 or 4 years ago?
Yep.
And it feels like they haven't stopped. The messaging and the advertising is huge. And we all know that they take 30% from the restaurant. It's ridiculous. So Kim and Adrian then went on a campaign and they took advantage of the gap in the market, which was someone offering a ordering solution that only takes 5%. And they quickly built a little tech solution where you could set yourself up as a restaurant, you could put your menu in, people could order via their credit card, and it could be delivered. And they got a whole bunch of press, and it was publicised everywhere that they were standing up for the little guy.
Yeah, cool.
So on the back of that momentum and that press, they're able to build out people registering interest for their platform. And then they listened to the customer, and then the next step they took was, right, COVID's just hit. No one wants to go and order with touching someone or going up to the
especially those menus. Ugh,
yeah,
just thinking about it.
And so that's where they got the QR code happening, and that's what's now led them to this explosion in uptake and user growth, which has now allowed them to say, well, hey, we're the dominant player, fund us to go and do it in other markets. Now they've gone to London. So the point of that story, I know it's long-winded, but it's just like it's a great example and a reference of an actual Aussie business that's stuck to the formula and it's worked. It takes a lot of courage to be brave and go, you know what, I want to be I'm going to get $89 million funding business one day, but I'll just start by improving someone's menu in the Chinese restaurant down the road.
Yeah. So when you're not working in your business, you also invest in other startups. So how did you get into this, and why are you so passionate about backing Aussie entrepreneurs?
Well, I would say, that's a good question. I would say the best way to describe it is, have you seen how cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is all the rage now?
Yeah.
It's almost like, because it's so exciting and people talk about it, it's what everyone who's got no idea goes and buys a little bit of or gets involved in.
Yeah.
Starts to call themselves an expert. And then you read in the news that Bitcoin's dropped 50% and it's all doom and gloom. And then you're like, what even is it?
Yeah.
So I think where angel investing comes into the part is, I think it's a little bit like crypto in the sense that, bear with me here, it's unknown. So a lot of people you talk to say, what's an angel investor? Or how do you invest in startups?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why it's not accessible to everyone, at least in their opinion, is because, you have to qualify as a certain type of investor, which needs to change, right? Because then more founders will get funded. But crypto is so unknown because it's like hard to touch and feel. Whereas with a startup that you're investing in, you can meet the founder. You can do your due diligence on the team. You can check out the business and what they've built. You can negotiate whether you want to be just in the background or whether you want to be involved. And you can find and identify people proactively that might be solving a problem where you would love to invest in a business, but you just know you'd never have the time to do it yourself. So for me, some of the best advice I got given from an angel investor once was, after all these years of seeing what works and what doesn't and what makes a great startup, the mentality of spray and pray still applies. So this investor, he won't mind me saying, Adrian Stone is his name, he's one of Australia's biggest. He says, after all the research and ability and skill I've developed, it still pays to play the volume game. So he will invest a smaller amount in more startups than a higher amount in maybe 5 or 10. So it'd be nothing for him probably to have 20, 30, 40 different startups in his portfolio. And he's probably banking on 4 to go well. So he's had to outlay on like 40 to get 4. But then if you can get one of those 4 to have a really good return, then it all writes itself off.
Yeah.
But what he's not talking about there, which is what I see, is all the opportunity and the immersion you get to have with the talent and the founders. And quite often in angel investing, and this is what I would say to any startup looking to approach one, is out of all the ones I've interviewed and spoke with, 9 out of 10 will invest initially because of the person or the team.
Yeah.
Because they know that if the team hasn't even thought about it, they know the business is going to change. It's going to have some ups and downs. It's going to be on death's door potentially. It's going to face real adversity. Someone's going to crack it and leave, and they're going to have to work that out. But if they've identified in that person that there's something there, well, most founders who fail are probably going to have a crack at another business. And where do you think they're going to turn when they want investment next time? And where will they be more willing to give someone preference and priority? So I think that's why a lot of angel investors will write that $25,000, $50,000 check into a person initially because they're backing them. Because there's so much that can go wrong, but if the person can face adversity and handle challenges and can be moulded, that's so much more to work with. And I like that analogy better than crypto, because crypto's not a person, doesn't have a personality, you can't reason with it, you can't talk to them. Whereas an angel investment, you can be passive and not have to commit any time, but you can still steer the ship and say what you think and help with decision making. I think that's really exciting. I think it just needs to change a bit and be more accessible for more people. that's where, when I talked about virtual earlier, that's what I like about virtual, because you can go on and you can put in $100 to a startup. You can put $10,000 into a startup and you can have a piece of it. And it unlocks that category of people that see a new product that's coming to market that could be, and they're probably identifying as a future consumer, so they can feel like, oh, I'm invested, I've got a part of that product. Not only am I benefiting from it succeeding, but I'm going to use that one day. I'll get value from that.
Yeah.
So I think angel investing can be quite fun, and you don't have to spend a fortune. It's not a huge, rich person's game. You know, you just need to meet the right people, and then you start to get exposed to good opportunity. And most founders, as you've probably found, are quite flexible, because in those initial stages, they're not just looking for money. They're looking for someone to help them. You know,
absolutely,
mentor them, or just be there when needed and not feel like they're alone. Oh, we're getting deep, aren't we?
I love it. But it's true, like what you said about it being like a rich person's sport, because that's the, you know, the sort of thought that you have about it when you think about investing. It's like that biggest step before exiting your startup.
Yep.
When you get to that investment stage, but it can come earlier than most people probably expect.
Yeah, well, best angel investors are founders and founders who've had an exit. The level of return you can get is amazing, and they know that because they've exposed to it and been through it. I think what needs to happen is more people just need to be educated on the whole startup ecosystem and environment. The closest most people get is Shark Tank.
Yep.
And Shark Tank does more damage than good, because more often the judges don't invest. And they don't invest based upon a pitch in 5 minutes and it's all over. Whereas if you ask any angel investor, they're going to be way more likely to invest in someone who has not left them alone, hasn't taken no for an answer, they haven't been able to get rid of, and they can see that this person is just absolutely committed to the cause. So it's exciting, but it's not difficult to do or to access. You just need to, I think, show that you're versatile and resilient as an individual or a duo team. Yeah.
That sort of leads me into my next question, is like, what advice would you give to people who want to take that that first step in like securing an angel investor? Like, what's that number one thing they need to do right off the bat?
Well, I don't like the cliche quotes that you hear a lot, but there is one that it does make sense. Ask for advice and you get investment. Ask for money and you get advice. So it's like, well, let's not beat around the bush here. We're all asking for investment. We all need it to sustain our businesses and for us to find our product market fit. You know, it's just a given that a startup, if it's trying to solve a big enough problem, is going to be pre-revenue for a little bit of time, and it is going to need time to find out who actually wants the product or service and who's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I would say showing an understanding and being moderate about your expectations for the business initially is better than saying to an investor, we are going to make millions in the first 12 months, you've got to get in now. It'd be more a case of, look, we're actually asking for this investment because we believe that there's a solution to this problem, but we know that it's going to take time to get there. We're going to go as quick as we can and as lean as we can, but we don't want to be rushed in the process. At the same time, we don't want to stray from being able to make sure we get all the feedback we need from customers so we can make the right next step. And we acknowledge that this is the hardest part. You know, traction will come. So we want to set ourselves up for that. And that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is actually asking. So it sounds simple, but you have to actually ask.
Yeah.
So like, you know, if you have no connection to someone and you want to play a numbers game, what is the harm in interacting with someone who's an investor on LinkedIn and direct messaging them and saying to them, one thing I do, which isn't asking them to invest in me directly sometimes, is I might say, if I had a business, I'd say, are you currently open to opportunities for investment right now? Or when is your next window open? So that's giving the person an out, but also saying, hey, when do you usually make a decision, so that I can make a note on my end to be ready to present to you the next time that arises. And hey, I'm not putting pressure on you to do it right now. So don't give me a hard yes or no. Answer this question: when do you usually? Or ask the other question: what do you not like to invest in? So don't get them to say what they do, because they'll say everything or anything. Say, what do you not like to? And then that way they have to think about it and they go, well, it's a chance then to say, hey, don't bother me if you're this type of business. And then I would say I've been taught before at Zash by a colleague, Peter Terrell. He taught me the process of a Project 100. So that's where you go through your contacts, either warm or cold, and you assemble a list of 100 people. This will take you a day, as you can imagine. Priority them around who you know best or who you've got a connection to.
Yep.
And then commit to a 2-week campaign. It's probably 20 calls a day, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a full day of follow-up. Oh, fit voicemail, I've got to go back, make a note tomorrow. And start a campaign. Treat it like a campaign. Knowing that you're going to get 70% no's or nothing, 30% or 20% maybe, and 10% yes. Let me hear more.
Yeah. And
then be ready. Oh my God, reach out. The reach out campaign, as you know, is pretty complex as it is. But then what about when you get the yes? You someone's on the hook, they're going to have 4 or 5 more questions. You're going to have to be able to answer them. And not all people are going to want to meet, especially now, right?
Yep.
So you want to be able to talk to them about the objections you think you're likely going to get.
It's definitely, from what I'm hearing, building relationships.
Yeah.
Committing the time, because this is one of those things that you're not going to see necessarily an immediate payoff.
Yep.
And you've got to be prepared for that, because some of us, we get so caught up in, but it's not going to give me a return straight away, so why should I give it the time?
Yeah.
If 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the track, you're going to get investment for your startup, well, it's 100% worth the exercise.
You're always going to be needing to raise funds at every stage of the journey. Your investor database is just as important as your customer database.
Yeah.
If not more important. Our business, we're a production company, so we're lucky in the sense that we have content that's relatively interesting and new each week. I quickly put together an email newsletter once a week for our business when we started. I've got the subscriber list up to about 380 odd people now. It's not huge.
Yeah.
Open rate's about 40%.
Great.
Hit rate's about 3%. I mean, it's a small pool of people, but 40% of people opening that, and I've got leads from it. And most of them are just sort of warm contacts that we'd all have, but I've taken the time to add them to the list, and before I know it, it's been like 11 weeks, and 11 weeks I've nurtured and been in front of the face of 380 odd contacts, and I haven't really had to do much for it.
No.
And it's like you do the same with an investor database. Anyone that says no, okay, that's fine. Can I flick you onto my email list? I just want to share with you the milestones as we grow.
That's
no
right.
worries. And then the next time comes around, they'll probably remember, oh yeah, I've seen your emails. I saw that last month you signed that big client. Wow, you guys really have stuck at it. All right, tell me more. I'm happy to be pitched.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It keeps you front of mind, which is, so important.
That's right.
Yeah.
In a world where everyone's distracted. And everyone's only watching videos for 10 seconds.
Oh, I know. Not even.
TikTok?
3 seconds.
3 seconds. There you go. 3 seconds. Wow. That's quick.
So we see a lot of myths out there about startup life and entrepreneurship.
Yep.
One of which is that founders need to be highly experienced to run a successful enterprise. Yep. What would you say to this?
No, of course not. I mean, no, it's a challenge. You have to have a curious mindset, and you have to be honest with yourself if you don't. And it's okay. You've got to be, unfortunately, you've got to have an appetite for risk.
Yeah.
I'm a naturally risk-averse person. I would say I'm probably pretty conservative. But if an opportunity presents itself enough times and I can see that I'm going to miss out and I can see that someone has to do it and I feel like I've got the energy to do it, then I'll act. But a lot of people won't. But this whole thing about feeling inferior because you don't belong to the startup community, because you don't know what the word startup or entrepreneur means, so what?
Yeah.
Who cares? It's more a case of there's plenty to get from going to an incubator or talking to a mentor or learning how to do some form of marketing or tech. But really, it's more about just finding a problem worth solving and backing yourself in, especially if it's something close to home. If you're a subject matter expert, if you're a food expert and it's something to do with food, you don't need to know how to spell entrepreneur. You just need to be able to back yourself into being curious about solving a problem for enough people in your shoes or around your shoes in that industry, and be curious and keep going. That's what I would say. If if you can get comfortable with the word uncertain, which most people should be able to now with COVID, then you'll be all right. Because the first 6-12 months, as you would know with all startups, it's so uncertain. I would say, honestly, being in an environment like Startup Gippsland, it makes all the difference. You've got to have a support network around you.
Yeah.
Especially in a regional centre. Like I ran Runways out in Geelong, which is another regional centre. We're a pre-revenue, more of a socially impact-skewed accelerator. And the biggest value the founders got out of it was a support network. But as soon as the incubator ended, it was amazing to watch how people really sort of fell away or they struggled without that connection or that support. So I would say lean in for that in your first 6-12 months, but make sure you're ready, because it's not a bad thing when you leave the incubator revenue in the big bad world, because you want to be able to stand up and handle that.
100%. Yeah. Brandon, it's been an absolute pleasure to sit down with you today, have some giggles, and talk about your very diverse and inspiring career so far, not to mention all the knowledge that you bring to the table. So thank you. So guys, if you'd like to get in touch with Brandon, you can reach out to him through his website, gettorched.com. And that's all for today, so be sure to tune into the next episode where I sit down with one of Gippsland's youngest startup and community legends. Until then, keep dreaming big, taking action, following your entrepreneurial pursuits, and showing the world that the best ideas can come from the smallest of backyards.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Startup Gippsland Live. Please be sure to subscribe, and if you're enjoying the show, we'd love for you to leave us a review. We can't wait to have you tune in again soon. For more great resources and business tips, make sure you head over to our website, startupgippsland.com.au, your home for Gippsland entrepreneurs.